Kirk had a video on polygamy. Let's look at this. I kind of do want to see this. He's on the Matt Walsh train.
This is from restaurants to mechanic shops to real estate firms, women's forum, and an anti-feminist. Wow. Joining us now is a very smart woman, Inez Stepman. She's a fellow Claremont, let's say, troublemaker with me, but independent women's forum and an anti-feminist. Wow, that's quite a statement. Inez, great to see you. Thank you for joining us. Inez, there is a discussion going online, and this is a very important topic. I don't want to get into any of the names because I think that will only distract us from the essence and the meat of this. But there are some online that are saying that young men, you should go be a polygamist. Have as many sexual partners as you can. Don't be restrained by monogamy. I think this is not just unbiblical. I think it's bad, insane, and a really terrible idea. Inez, walk our audience through this kind of the growing movement and sentiment of young men that seem to be very, very mad at no-fault divorce, which is leading them towards almost a polygamist aim, and your response to it. Inez Stepman.
Well, first, I mean, I've argued against no-fault divorce for a decade. I do think it's bad policy. I think it's bad family policy. And, you know, actually, it's a little fun anecdote. My husband and I went to one of the 3 states in the union to redo our marriage contract that allows anti-no-fault divorce, where they have a list of possible grounds for divorce. It really doesn't work that well in law because you can always escape to the next state. But that's part of the issue with the fact that all of our states have moved to a no-fault regime. But, you know, that's neither here nor there. I don't think that this argument, first of all, it has some truth to it because there is something to the fact that we are by nature not monogamous, that women are hypergamous and that men are, you know, hardwired to try.
Chat, is she one of them boys? Why do I have a feeling that she's one of them boys, bro?
To have as many children as possible with as many women as possible. And this was something that worked relatively well in human societies in the pre-Christian era and before and to some extent after in primitive societies, but it was totally incompatible once societies moved into some kind of civilization. And the reason for
Don't just say yes, tell me how you know.
that, the reasons for that are anthropological. There's obviously there's a religious argument against this, there's a moral argument against it, but there's also a common sense and anthropological argument against it. And there's a reason that polygamy, widespread polygamy, as opposed to a small minority elite, but a widespread polygamy as a system of marriage, has basically disappeared. All the societies that practice that, like the Plains Indians, have been essentially defeated, replaced, overwhelmed by societies that didn't.
Yeah, so let's dive deeper into that. So we believe monogamy is obviously biblically and morally correct, but it's superior cultural technology. So if young men right now start to engage in widespread polygamy, or what they call this red pill culture, and explain that. It's not the red pill that we would think of, which is, you know, to believe in conservative or MAGA values, but it's something completely foreign and different. Inez, can you explain that and talk about—
That's fucking funny.
how polygamy is actually really bad for a culture at large?
Yeah, I mean, polygamy has a math problem, right? Even if you don't agree that it has a moral problem, you don't agree with the morality that is taught by Christianity, by Judaism, then you still have a math problem at the end of the day, right? So then the basic math problem is what to do with all of the unattached men who have no wife and no hope of getting a wife and no hope of reproducing or having sex, right? And those guys tend to get restless and angry. We see this like on a small scale in our society today, right?
Yes, it stabilizes society so average men have sexual access. But the problem with it, she doesn't understand, is that when you allow feminism to permeate throughout society, women naturally go to a polygamous society, right? And that's what makes this so fucking funny to me, is that they're sitting here saying like, oh yeah, well, you know, polygamy is bad. Like it leads to less stable societies. The men that don't get sexual access end up becoming violent and wild. It's not good for society. Fine. But who does that? Feminism literally, indirectly, of course, pushes polygamy because the women now are in the driver's seat. And since the women are in the driver's seat, hypergamy is what they do. And not only is hypergamy what they do, but society encourages them to exercise hypergamy to the highest level. There's no fucking filters or ability to rein in the hypergamy. So it's actually women, right? It's actually women that push polygamy through feminism. Indirectly, of course. They think that they have all the freedom, but they really don't.
People are not finding a partner, are not finding a girlfriend, a wife, right? You see that there's unrest there. Some of it mitigated by the soma drugs of, pornography or just doom scrolling online, but still, like, it causes social problems. Now imagine flipping those numbers, right? You have an 80% incel culture, for example. What happens is there's a lot of restless young men, and in times when societies were going to war, when there was a war season, frankly, a lot of the young men were just dying, right? So a smaller and smaller number of men were making it through that gauntlet of constant warfare and then establishing themselves in, let's say, a Plains Indian tribe in a position where he would be permitted by society and attractive enough to women to take a wife and then another wife and then another wife, right? But you can see how very quickly, if your entire civilization depends on warfare, which is very much true about the Plains Indians, depended on this constant seasonal warfare, that doesn't leave a lot of room for building things. That doesn't leave a lot of room for actually applying labor as opposed to defense and war, applying it to, butter, right? The traditional distinction between guns and butter, to applying it to, learning to cultivate, right? To building wealth and being able to defend it against constant attacks, right? So that's why a lot of those civilizations were very precarious. They lived very war-filled and precarious lives. And by the way, it didn't really, contra some of the other claims, didn't really explode their fertility rate either. Most of those societies had very low fertility rates, to the point where they were constantly having to raid other societies for more women in the hopes of saving their tribes from extinction, from demographic extinction. So it is a way that, to some extent, a natural way that people have lived throughout the past, but it is not compatible with actually building wealth, technology, all the things, by the way, that make modern warfare, make you a formidable opponent in modern warfare.
So it's an important point, because societies that embrace polygamy actually don't do very well. So why don't you take a step back here, Inez, and explain what an incel is, the problems with young men and young female dynamic and relationships right now. Why are so many young men not getting married? Why is this even worthy?
All right, let's see what the anti-feminist says.
Of our time to discuss, and this is even being proposed as a potential alternative. Explain it to our audience that is not totally in touch with some of the structural issues happening right now.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's a big question, and I'm sure there are a lot of people with a lot of thoughts about this. The dating discourse is broad and long, but I do think at least part of it is the fact that we've lost touch with the differences between men and women and what men and women look for in a partner. And you see the projection going both directions, right? You see women complaining. There was a recent viral tweet a couple of weeks ago about a woman saying her friends are just fantastic, amazing catches. And then in describing how she thinks that they're amazing catches, right? She's talking about their master's degrees or the fact that they have really great jobs. And it's not even.
Yeah, and that's why women are stupid.
And that those things in themselves.
Thinking we give a fuck about any of that stuff.
Are turnoffs. I think that can go too simplistic on some of the red pill discourse, but it's that they just don't matter that much to men. And women are just thinking about the things that they would like to see. Ambition, for example, the ability to provide, right? The fact that men and women are looking for different things. So I think there are like two big hits going on in the dating culture, in addition to just everybody retreating from an IRL life. One is like just simply the obesity crisis, right? And that hits women's attractiveness more than it hits men, because women are not as visually choosing their partners.
And also because women don't have to do much. If you're fat, like, what the fuck?
As men are. So it hits women harder than men, even though both men and women are statistically obese. And then on the male side, just lest you think I'm only ragging on women, on the male side, the ability to interact charmingly in person, to be funny, right, to crack a joke, to seem comfortable and confident in company, again, both men and women are retreating from that. We spend more time with our phones. We spend more time interacting in an asynchronous manner where you don't have to come up with anything witty on the fly. You can take your time and type out a text, right? That hits all of us, but it hits young men more than women because
I'll say this. I met a lot of guys at the young guys at the Turning Point USA event. And I will say a lot of them are extremely socially awkward and timid and can't convey their ideas out properly. That's something I did notice with a lot of young guys that came up to me. And I don't think it's necessarily a problem because of them. I think it's a generational problem. It's something that I've noticed very strongly in young guys under the age of 25 or under the age of 30. It's like there's this strange inability to properly communicate in a way where you're speaking in the active voice.
Women just don't really want to be with like a shy, awkward kind of guy. It really is just not one of the things that women are naturally attracted to. And I think when you put both of those two things together, you add in, long sexual histories and heartbreak, you add in the fact that people are looking to marry much later. You add all those things together and you get something where the sexual market, if you will, where the average person on both sides of the sex divide is less attractive to the opposite sex than they were, let's say, in 1970, where the average woman was
so
younger, hasn't.
That's not true. It's the other way. Guys are totally willing to concede and get with women that are below them. Women are not, though. Totally wrong on that one.
Dated around as much, right? Doesn't have as long a sexual history, is slimmer, right? And is generally not opposed to behaving in a more feminine way or taking on a more feminine role. On the flip side, right, in 1970, you had a lot of cultural encouragement for men to develop those kinds of social skills, to develop competencies to feel that would make them feel competent and confident when they were going out and talking to women. Those were things that were kind of instilled in the culture, not to be too glib about it, but you get stuck in a locker more often. You would get bullied, and that might have been
Bullying is good, makes you a man.
painful, but it really did shape people in a way that made them more attractive on average to the opposite sex. And then, of course, there was a big pay differential between men and women in 1970 in a way that's not true today on the average sort of dating market. So look, love is individual. I'm not trying to be too didactic about this, but
and that's another mistake. It's actually very fucking simple. It's actually very fucking simple. It can be complex to a degree, but what women are looking for typically, love doesn't get complicated until they actually find you attractive. What I'm saying is that most guys don't even make it to the point where they can be loved by a chick because they're not attractive enough. Okay, that's putting the cart before the horse.
it's still
Most guys don't even have the prerequisite sexual marketplace to get a girl to fall in love with them in the first place.
you can look at the overall dating market and see where, your average woman and your average guy who are out there looking for a partner may be less satisfied with what they find than they would have been 30 or 50 years ago.
That is so true. This is evidenced by the time I spent with a lot of students at our Student Action Summit. And I said to the men, how many of you are upset with the current dating market? They're all their hands go up.
Okay, yeah.
I said, young ladies, how many of you are upset with the current dating market? All their hands go up. And
Yeah, but it's the women's fault. It's so fucking garbage. Like, it's funny because it's like the women's hands go up, but but women have all the leverage. Women have all the leverage and all the power, so they can't complain about shit.
I said, we got a serious problem here. The young women, they want a 6'5", blue eye, hunky hedge fund manager making $2 million a year that will, never cheat on
Delusional, stupid
her. Yeah, good luck finding that.
Yep.
And the men, they want something equally as unrealistic. And so we find ourselves...
men are far more realistic, Charlie. Come on, man. Men are far more realistic when it comes to their partners' limitations than women are. That's not even close. Men are way more fucking realistic when it comes to the sexual marketplace than women are.
...ourselves at an impasse that has a fertility collapse, a marriage collapse, a dating collapse. And of course, social media is harming this. I think feminism is to blame for a lot of it. We'll talk about that after the break. But I want everyone in the audience to know that this is a civilizational emergency that's happening in front of our eyes. It is a massive and major issue. Marriage is the foundation of a successful society. Young ladies don't want to get married.
Yeah, but Charlie, who's ending the marriages and who has all damn near unattainable standards for the marriage? It's the women, bro. It's the fucking women, man. And then on top of that, there's way too much risk to get married.
To their late 20s and early 30s, and then they find out that some of them actually are not as, let me put it this way, or even later, that men want to have younger women. Let's just put it that way without myself getting in too much trouble. Inez, you describe yourself as an anti-feminist. What is feminism and why are you anti?
Yeah, it's funny because I've been putting that in my bio for, I don't know, 10 years, 10 years, 15 years now. It's gotten sort of mixed in with the trad wife accounts and some other weird things that I want nothing
Man, look, bro, I'll keep it 1,000 with you guys. These tradcon women are just undercover feminists.
to do with. But it's the definition that I use is the political, economic, and cultural equality or social equality of the sexes. I think that's a pretty fair and broad definition of feminism. For one, it's the definition in Merriam-Webster dictionary, but it's also the definition that Beyonce used when she put that giant feminist sign behind her. So it has, I think, some broad appeal. And the reason I like that definition is it swoops in a lot of people who think of themselves as more on the right, or who are conservative. They're like, what's wrong with that? Well, I mean, I think there are really two things wrong with it. One is that it's not possible. And two is that I wouldn't think that it would be desirable. So the differences between men and women are incredibly deep, and the feminist sort of premise from the very beginning, from the first wave of feminism, you can go back and read Wollstonecraft in the American founding and still see the sort of seed of this idea, and that is that those differences are primarily socially constructed rather than biological and immutable. And I think you've seen the final stop on that train with the trans issue, right? If we say that when men and women are interchangeable biologically with regard.
Yep, and that backfired on women. The feminists, they were the Trojan horse that brought in all the bullshit, was the feminism. And now they're dealing with the final boss, which is the woman that's really a man, fucking them up in their own sports.
Regard to everything important in life, if they're interchangeable.
Right.
In our relationships, in our careers, in society, in our role in the world, and in our families, then I don't see why we shouldn't say that those biological exterior differences are also irrelevant and interchangeable. The differences between men and women above the neck, I guess, is the short version is the differences above the neck and in our brains, which are confirmed by decades of science before the academy stepped on doing any of this kind of science, are as significant as the ones that are below the neck that are obvious and external. These differences are deep, and I simply think that it's better to accept them, to celebrate them, and to use them in a complementary way where men and women can actually feed off of each other's strengths and counter each other's weaknesses and build a more flourishing society together.
In closing here, Inez, so what does this look like then from a conservative movement standpoint? How should we approach this? Because there's a lot of young men that are really upset, they're really jaded, and they're joining the conservative movement in record numbers, which is amazing. How do we handle this as a movement conservatively to be pro-family, but also try to remedy this structural differences between the sexes?
Cooked. It's cooked. And that's why I tell you guys, you got to be the best version of yourself, and you got to navigate the sexual marketplace on your own in a selfish manner. I don't give a fuck. It is what it is. It's fucking cooked, chat. It's cooked. Okay? There's no longer any real incentive to get married. Women are rewarded for destroying the marriage. Well, a lot of these women are sluts. Half these are crazy. A lot of these women are involved in sex work and whores. You guys saw this OnlyFans girl going fucking nuts. Guys, what if I told y'all, right, that women that have promiscuous backgrounds, a lot of them behave that way. Okay? Fucking crazy. Will ruin your life. Okay? Because they don't got their own mental health in check. The only thing you could do now at this point, guys, I'm telling y'all, and people are not going to like, the tradcons get mad at me when I say this shit. You have to date defensively now. That's what it is. You have to date defensively. That's where we are now, chat. Literally. You must date defensively with these fucking because if you don't, they will ruin your life. Okay? And they're okay with ruining your life because they don't deal with fucking consequences for their shitty ass behavior. It's cooked, bro. And I told you guys this already. You got 3 options, really. If you're going to get married, you're going to get married with the state involved. Excuse me, with the state not involved. No state involvement. Right? If you're not going to get married, you want to be a womanizer, you're going to be a pay-for-play ass nigga. Right? And then if you're not going to be a pay-for-play guy, like myself, because you got too much pride, I'll admit it, you're going to have to be extremely careful with the women that you deal with and limit your interactions. Always be sober, never be doing drugs, not involved in none of that bullshit, because that's when you start to run into problems. But realistically speaking, bro, it's cooked. It's cooked, man. Or you could be a passport bro. That's the other option. So, you guys decide. But I'm telling y'all, man, it's not looking bueno, man. Shit is absolutely fucking, this dating marketplace, bro, is fucking garbage.
Yeah, I mean, so I think it's important that we take some of these structural concerns and legal concerns seriously. I'll say that up front before I get to the part that I think, young men probably won't like to hear from me. But the part that I think I agree with them on is that it is time for the conservative movement to pick up some of these issues. It is time for us to pay attention to the bias in family courts. It is time for us to think about the
Yeah, and until they fix that, I don't suggest any guy even fucking bother, honestly. You guys, right now.
incentives that we are building into marriage and to counteract those both legally and culturally. And I think we're finally at a moment where a lot of people are willing to listen to those kinds of concerns more than they might have 10 years, 20 years ago. Because I mean, the major problem with the conservative movement, since I've been a part of it for, 15 years or something, has been that they've always been chasing the left. Conservatism is just progressivism going the speed limit. Just in this issue, they really have done that. They've chased the left. They've chased the label feminist. They've chased the idea that the right is the real feminists, while the left is the crazy feminists. And I think we really should stop chasing that train and look at some of the ways in which we built female victimhood and frankly power over
Yes.
men into the legal system. And by the way, at the top of that list is things like ensuring due process when there are sexual misconduct allegations on college campuses, right? Something that Biden was personally involved in as a VP under the Obama administration in stacking that deck against young men in college, and something that the Trump administration reversed not once, but now twice. So I do think we should pay attention to more of those issues and take them seriously.